Welcome to Harness Up with Haste Draft Horses and Mules, where we talk all things related to these magnificent animals. From their history and uses to training and care, we cover it all. Join us as we chat with experts and enthusiasts in the field, share stories and tips, and explore the world of draft horses and mules. Whether you're a seasoned owner or just curious about these gentle giants, this podcast is for you. So harness up and join Haste Draft Horses and Mules for some lively discussions about these God-given creatures.
Good afternoon, folks. Stephen Haste here, Harness Up podcast with Haste Draft Horses and Mules. We're here in Lexington, Kentucky today, beautiful city, and I got the pleasure to sit here with a fella I've been waiting to talk to for a long time. Mr. Herbert Reed.
My pleasure.
Good to meet you, buddy. Y'all may have watched the podcast back last summer I did with Eric Reed, racetrack, Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
This is his father. Goes by Herbie, I think.
Yep.
So
I'm famous. I'm the father of the 148th Kentucky Derby winner.
that's right. You are.
I'm the sire.
You're the sire.
And there's a lot of trainers that win the Derby.
That is.
But sire of a trainer, that's different.
You are the sire of a trainer.
Yeah. I tell him he ruined my life because just about everywhere we go now, we go out to eat, somebody's picked up my ticket and they get ready to leave. I said, what? Who did it? That time I walk over and he said, you're Eric's dad. I said, yeah. Man, I got it. It's a pleasure. I said, hell, I got to put glasses on now so nobody recognize me when I go out because I don't feel normal. I can't spend my money.
Was it like that right after the Derby pretty bad?
Oh, yeah. I've met people in the grocery store come up. You're Eric's dad. I said, yeah, man, I knew it. You look like him and all that. We stand there and talk forever.
Kind of proud to say you're Eric's dad, though.
Yeah, I am now. Yeah.
Proud of it now.
Before, we ain't going to talk about that.
Did you get Eric into horse racing, you think?
Yeah.
Where was you
I didn't
raised?
want him to get into it, but he wanted into it, and he loved it. And from the time he was, I'd say, 6 years old on, he went to track with me all the time, every day that he could go. And like I told him at Churchill, by the time he was 7, 8 years old, he could put a spider web on, spider bandage on a horse, and most people don't even know what that is anymore. It's a hard bandage to put on. And he'd sit under them old horses and stuff, and I never thought about it then, but now I think about it. It was dangerous. It's a wonder he hadn't got hurt. You know, thoroughbreds are high strung, and he's in there sitting under a horse 7, 8 years old. Looks like I'm trying to get rid of him or something, you know.
He loved it.
But yeah, he never got hurt. Thank God, because he could have got kicked or a horse could have jumped on him or something at being that age. But he loved horses right from the start. And he went to high school and graduated with high honors. And he could have went to any college he wanted to go, but he said, I don't need to go to college. I know what I want to be. I'm going to be a horse trainer. I'm going to train horses.
Where was you born and raised?
I was born in Powell County, Stanton, on the old Dirksen farm.
Eastern Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Then you moved to Lexington when?
I was 10, maybe going on 11. I hitchhiked from Powell County to for sales. Of course, everybody hitchhiked back then. It
At
wasn't
10-year-old
today.
you did?
I wasn't quite 11. And I had an aunt that lived in Milner there for sales. And this old guy in a cattle truck picked me up, and he was taking cows out on 33 for somebody. And he was a big, heavy-set guy, and I knew I was scared to death. When we got for sales, I said, he's going to take me to, because he kept asking me questions. Now, your family know where you're coming. They know who. I said, oh, yeah, my aunt knows I'm coming. She didn't know I was coming. But I told him, I said, she knows I'm coming. I'm going to be there. And I said, he said, well, how far is it from sales? I said, about a mile. Well, it's about 4.5 miles from Versailles to Milton. But we got there, and you pull up, when you go to get on 33 in Versailles, you pull right up the stoplight, and there's a courthouse there.
I know where it's
You
at.
take a left. Next street is Rose Hill Street, and that's where he let me off. But when he pulled up to the courthouse, I just knew he was going to take me in and say, hey, I think this kid's run away from home or something. But
Why?
he didn't. He told me, he said, look, this is against my better judgment.
Why did you want to go to Versailles?
My aunt was there.
Okay.
And I was leaving. Because people I was staying with there in I was staying with some people in Powell County, and I'd heard them talking the day before, like, well, you know, he needs somebody. They need to come and get him. He needs to be under somebody's care or something. You know, he's gonna get hurt. He's gonna get killed. He's on his own. Nobody guiding him and all this stuff. You know, I heard them saying it, and we can't afford to keep another kid. We've got all we can do. So when I heard that, I knew it was time to leave.
You got out.
So I got out of there, and I did that several times. I stayed with a lot of aunts and uncles there for sales. I wouldn't stay home. My dad remarried, and my stepmother and I, she hated me for some reason. And I didn't like her either. But I'd say the reason is my mother probably had me spoiled rotten, because.
Well.
Yeah. Just give me a minute.
So how'd you get into the horse scene?
Well, I got to for sales, and I stayed with 4 or 5 people different there for sales. But my aunt was the best one I ever stayed with, Hazel, and she had 3 kids. And her father, my uncle, worked for John Conley, the singer's daddy.
Okay.
And he got run through a silage cutter, and they buried him in a plastic bag. He was pulling, you know, it got hung up, and he was pulling it out. It jerked him through.
I know what
And
that is, yeah.
then I stayed with 3 or 4 other people there for sales coming up. But I was staying with these people, and Ray Passmore, he was a little rider at them small tracks and stuff, a jockey. And he said, why don't you go to the track with me tomorrow? It was on a Sunday morning. And I said, well, yeah, I'll go out with you. And I went out there with him. I was 14 years old. So I went out there with him, and I watched him. He got on 7, 8 head of horses. And we was coming home, and I said, do they pay you to do that? And he said, well, if they didn't, I wouldn't be doing it. And I got to thinking, man, this guy just made $16. And I'm making $18 a week, working 7 days a week, you know. I'm thinking, I said, well, I can do that. He said, yeah, you could, but you got to be 16 to get on horses. They won't hire you. But he said, you know, go to the farm, start out with horses and learn about them. So I went to work for Scott Miller, Mac Miller's brother, there for sales. And I was doing mares and foals. And I knew right off the bat, when I first started fooling them foals, I was in love.
You was hooked.
I loved horses, but I wanted to get on horses. I wanted to ride horses because I was thinking about that $2 a head. You know, I said, man, that's big money.
Versus 18 a week.
Yeah, so I go across the street, and Doug Davis had a farm called High Hope Farm, and Dick Spiller was his assistant. He run the show for him, and a little black guy about 5'7" or 6. And I asked him, I said, y'all need any help breaking yearlings? And this was right about, September, 1st or 2nd week of September. And saying I was getting ready to turn 15 or 16. I can't really remember, it's 15 or 16. I think it's 15. In October, my birthday's October 4th. So he said, you ever been on any horses? I said, yeah, bro, I've never been on a horse in my life. He said, well, show up here Monday morning. Come here Monday morning at 7 o'clock. And he said, we'll give you a shot. I showed up 7 o'clock, went in their stall, and he called me in. He was looking at me, know I had old shoes on, soles falling off of them. Didn't have a helmet, none of that stuff. Didn't have to then, but, you know, most of them did. But he put the bridle on the horse, and I was on the other side. He laid the saddle up, and I'm standing there, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, he said, come around here a minute. I come around. He said, number 1, you ain't 16. I said, yeah, I am. He said, no, you ain't. Quit that damn line. You ain't 16. And he said, number 2, you ain't never been on a horse. You don't even know what side to get on a horse. I said, yeah. He said, I told you, quit that line. And he told the reporters at Kingland that one time. They interviewed him before he passed away. And he said, now look, I know you're having a hard time. He said, I'm going to give you a chance. But he said, you know, I've got a wife, 3 or 4 kids, and you ain't going to cost me my job. He said, now I'm going to show you what to do, and if you can do it, fine. If you can't, you got to go. And I said, that's fair enough. And he told me, we laid across from a while, turned around, and then he let me get on him. And he said, now, when you turn him left, just kind of nudge him a little bit to the right. Don't kick him hard. Don't pull on his mouth because they've never had anything in their mouth. Mm-hmm. And if you pull hard, they'll flip backwards on you. And if you kick them hard, they're going to, jump. He said, just go 50-50 with him. Be easy.
These was 2-year-olds, right?
Yeah, the yearlings.
Yearlings.
Yearlings. Never been on. So I was lucky again. I had 5 horses, and not a one of them was crazy. Now, how lucky because back then they didn't handle horses like they do today. Today they're like little dogs. You can walk up and pet them in the field, But I was lucky, boy. I didn't have one that was jumping, kicking. Them other boys had them jumping, kicking, bucking. So we stayed in the stall about, I guess, 6 or 7 days. And he said, now we're going out in the shed row. They had more room out there, We went out and stayed in the shed row, walked them around, and figure-8'd them and stuff. And did that for about, I'd say about a week. Then we went out in the field. And when we went out in the field and come back, he told me, he said, you're going to be okay.
That made you feel good.
Yeah, he said, you got good hands on a horse and you're not scared, you're going to be okay. And that made me feel real good.
How long did you work for him?
I was with Doug about a year, I guess. And then I went to Kingland. I went to Kingland with Doug. Got on horses out there, never been on the racetrack. I had to learn the poles. The green and white poles are 8th pole, black and white 16th. And if you're at Kingland, you count them backwards, you go back. And so it didn't take me long to pick that up. And so I just got lucky. And then I got with the right, I was in the kitchen breaking horses for Ernest Woods and Laurel T. Stevens. And me and Mr. Woods and Tommy just hit it off. And man, we were just like best friends. Mr. Woods loved me to death, and Tommy did too. And Tommy come in there one morning and he said, look, won't you get your trainer's license? And he said, what we'll do, the horses that won't make it to the big, that ain't working, don't look like they're going to make it to big track, we just keep around here and run them and sell them, or somebody claim them or something. And I said, man, I can't train no horse on them. But he said, yeah, you can. He said, and we sat there and talked for a long time, and he talked me into it, so I did. I went and got my trainer's license, and I was with Mr. Woods for maybe 20 years, him and Laurel Stevens. Yeah, I credit Laurel Stevens with giving me a chance to be a trainer. But I was never assistant trainer for anybody, and never run a barn for anybody. But I listened to the old trainers, and I watched what they did, and I picked up on it, and it's just common sense. And I just happened to be good at it, had a talent for it, and I was lucky.
What was your favorite memory of back in your training years with the 20 years, like your favorite race or something?
Favorite race?
Favorite race you trained at?
Well, I mostly run at the little tracks. I didn't run. I'd run horses at Kingland, and I'd win.
What tracks would that be?
Beulah Park, Fairmont, Ellis, Miles Park. Had old Miles Park then, and those little tracks like that. We'd just take horses that wouldn't go anywhere else and run them and hope somebody'd claim them. Or if they didn't claim them, they'd run good enough we could sell them after the race. And if they didn't do that, then he'd end up giving them to somebody, for a pleasure horse or something. But I didn't run any real good. I had good horses, and I got them ready and shipped them out, some real good horses. And but to run them, it's hard to train on I was little track in the wintertime to keep a horse fit to run, keep him in shape. So anything that looked like it had a lot of talent, we'd send up the road somewhere.
You still hanging out with Eric, giving pointers and things now?
I don't talk to him much about horses.
You don't?
No, he knows too much.
I see.
Makes me feel bad. I feel inferior to him now.
Hey, at least you can go over to his barn and still hang out and get the feel of it.
I tell everybody, I said, boy, can't train Lassie to bark, but he won the Derby.
He did win the Derby?
Yeah, he did. He won a whole lot of races.
He won the Derby.
I'd say he won more racing in about 3 years than I did in my whole career. He was just good. He loved it. I mean, you find something you love to do, you'll never work.
You loved it too, though.
Oh, yeah, I did. But, after, I guess I trained for about 40 years, and I just got burnt out, 7 days a week. And I was come up the old way. You had to be the first one to barn, the last one to leave, and you had to check the temperature, all this crazy stuff, and you know, and it just, and the help changed too. You know, back when I first started, them grooms, you say something about one of them's horse, he'd fight you. They had pride in what they did, you know.
They got aggressive.
Yeah, they did. They loved their horses, and but the horse business really saved my life. The horse business and
Eric.
Her,
your wife.
Yeah, I met her. I was 16.
What's her name?
Glenda.
Glenda. She's over there.
I was 16. She got lucky that day I met her. She's been lucky ever since. 61 years we've been married.
So when did you get married in for sales?
I was 16. She was 17, and when Eric was born, I was just turning 18 when Eric was born.
How many children you got?
Two boys.
2 boys.
Yeah. We knew we couldn't afford another one, so I had the vasectomy because it was cheaper.
That's right.
And so we didn't have any more. So that's all we could afford.
That's cheaper, yeah.
And we looked at them 2 ugly suckers and thought, we don't want any more, really. But
after you did you work anywhere else other than horse racing?
No.
You just did horse racing your whole life?
That's all I ever did my whole life. And now, when I was young coming up, I worked in tobacco and hay and straw for people there for sales. Roy Snap, I was with him for about 7, 8 months, and his son's one of Eric's best friends, Frankie Snap.
So you know what it's like to cut a stalk of tobacco and hang it and strip it?
Yes, I do. I've cut it, and they'd put me on the top rail because, you know, you only put one rail out, the one's on the bottom. And
I've been on the top rail many days.
Yeah. That's some of the hardest work you'll ever do, that tobacco.
I tell people all the time, you don't know a day's hard work until you cut tobacco and hang it.
You got that right.
Did Eric ever get to experience that? Or?
No, I didn't want him to get blisters on his hands.
I see.
For using them old hatchets and things.
I think some of the prettiest horse barns in the state are old tobacco barns.
They are.
That they redo.
And you know, it's a shame you see them getting rid of them all the time, tearing them down and stuff, and it's part of our culture.
I love how they put blacktop down the center of them old tobacco barns.
Yeah.
And it's still got that smell in it.
Yeah.
But it's a horse barn.
Yes.
Just something about it. It's Kentucky.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand.
Nope.
It's a feel in this state, in this area,
Yep.
that you can't get nowhere else.
No, you can't.
Race day is a feel too.
It sure is.
Rich Strike that day was a feel.
Oh my God, a dream come true. I'm telling you, on the way home, I still had a hard time believing it.
Did you have a feeling at all that day you was going to win?
I knew he wasn't going to be last. I told everybody, I said, I can tell you one thing, because if you looked at his chart, I got really high on him when he ran the last race at Turfway. He should have won that race by 4 or 5 lengths, got in trouble 3 different times, and still run third. And I'm thinking, this horse is for real. I come home, I told Glenn, I said, he's for real. This horse can run with these horses. So he'd proved he could run with them, and he was always catching them at the end. So that extra 1/8 of a mile, shame on him.
Shame on him.
He run over top of them.
Oh,
I was telling her, I said, man, if you just finish in the middle of the pack, you've got a hell of a horse. You're running against the best 3-year-olds in the country, in the world.
He won.
So, he run over, maybe, unbelievable. What was unbelievable is that he got him there. He took him there. Yeah. Most trainers, if I'd have claimed that horse for $30,000, I'd have run him back for $50,000 and hope he win, get my money back. Then I'd maybe run him back in a non-winners of a race other than, or non-winners of 2. No way I'd have run him in a graded stake trying to get Derby. But Eric told me he didn't have that horse 2 weeks, wasn't it? He called me and he said, I got the best horse I ever trained in my life. And I'm thinking, man, you had a filly got beat a head by Rachel Alexander. I said, well, how can you say that? And he said, believe me, it's the best horse I ever had in my life. And I said, well, good luck with that. Sure enough, he was right.
You didn't believe it?
No way. And you know, it was funny going up there. I took $300 with me, and I didn't tell many people this because I told her, I said, I'm going to bet 100 across the board, and I'm going to put it in a frame and put it on the wall. And we got up there, I didn't bet a dime. I chickened out.
You didn't bet on Rich
No, I didn't bet a dime. Well, we was coming home and everybody in the car was loaded. anybody that didn't know anything about a horse was betting on Rich Strike because of Eric and us, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't bet on him. I didn't bet a penny. I told Eric, I said, look, everybody got money. We worked all our life in the horse business, and I ain't got nothing. I didn't bet a dime on it. But, you know, you take most horse people, you could put a gun to their head and they wouldn't bet on him. Looking at him, you know, you'd win one race. But if you looked at his chart, you go back and look at his chart, he come running after them horses every time. The only time he was disappointed was when you took him to Louisiana and they had to stay in the stall for 3 days. And he's a high-strung horse. He got to do something every day. And Eric said he tried to turn the paddock up, but like never got the saddle on him. And he didn't run good that day. But other than that, every race he was coming at them. He come running at them.
You still travel to tracks some and go?
No, I don't.
You just stay in Lexington around here?
Yeah, I got a bed and breakfast, and we had a little wedding venue. And we have a daycare there and for sales. My wife's been in the daycare business for about, 45 years?
50.
Yeah.
Still doing it?
Yeah, she still got one there for sale. So, you know, it keeps us busy. And I got like maybe 9-acre farm. And I do the
any
mowing
horses
and
on
the,
it?
huh?
Any horses on it?
No.
So if you want to see horses, you just go to Eric's barn.
Yeah. Yep.
That's
Now, if he'd find me one like Red Strike for $30,000, I might get back in it.
you might buy it.
Yeah. But when you can claim a horse worth 5/8 a mile and 59 for $30,000, you better.
He was at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Well, you know, he took a chance because most people, you take a horse that worked like that and they run him for 30, there's something hole in him somewhere, there's something bad wrong. But they took a chance and got caught, is the way I seen it.
Got good.
Yeah.
Real good. What's the name of your bed and breakfast there?
Rabbit Creek.
And anybody can come stay at it, huh?
Yeah.
That's nice.
For a small fee.
For a small fee. Does she cook them breakfast?
Yeah. We could fix some breakfast. I sit in there and shoot the bull with them and talk to them.
Can she cook it good?
Sometimes I take them around, you know, to some of the farms or something, because they like to hear about horses. You know, most of them don't know anything about horses.
Little tour.
Yeah.
Bluegrass tour.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah.
That's neat. Keeneland's still going strong. You don't go over and watch any?
Well, if he's running something, you know,
Yeah.
a big race or something, I might go over.
You'll
But
go
other
check
than
it
that,
out.
I don't. You know, when I left Keeneland, I had some horses, 2 real good friends of mine. And I told them, I said, I'll keep, when they're gone, I'm out. I ain't never training no more. And I left, it was like somebody took 2 tons off my back. You know, it's 7 days a week my whole life. That's all I ever did. I was married to it. You don't get Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, none of that stuff. You know, and I was burned out.
Kind of like my dad and me growing up. We had a dairy farm.
Oh, gosh.
We was married to it.
I milked. Now, I'd have to ask, I think it was 12 or 13 cows when I was with Roy Snap, every morning and every night.
By hand?
And he had 2 old sets of milkers.
Okay.
And I'd milk one by hand while they was doing it so I could get done quicker. And they'd eat those old wild onions out there. They'd come out in that milk.
Oh.
And they'd get that mastitis, and you'd have to
Yep.
stick that tube up in there,
I
and
know
I
all
forget
about
what
it.
it's called, and they'd kick you from here to that door sometimes. It's a wonder I hadn't got killed.
We had kickers we put over their hips and tightened them up, keep them where they couldn't kick.
Yeah, I didn't have that, but
We had them at the barn, but
man, it was, you put it in a can, it was all I could do to drag it to the road. I had to drag it maybe from here to the house to the road, and it was all I could do to drag it out there, because, you know, hell, I wouldn't weigh 120 pounds then, 115.
back a few years ago, I was at an Amish house. I got a lot of friends that are Amish. And this woman makes cottage cheese, homemade cottage cheese.
I love cottage cheese.
Well, they brought me some out. I like it too.
Yeah.
I got a bite of that stuff, and it was that old green onion milk.
Oh, gosh.
I about lost it.
It turned me against milk.
It's funny you say that about that. It turned my stomach. I
Yeah.
told that woman, I said, your cottage cheese is good, man, but God bless that cow's got them wild onions. I couldn't eat it. I could not
I
eat
know
it.
what you mean.
I could not eat it. I got turned against milk pretty much, period, now. The
Yeah.
smell of raw milk all my
Oh,
life.
that's the way I am. I hardly ever drink it.
I'd rather have a bottle of Gatorade or something
Yeah,
than milk.
anything but milk. Don't give me no milk.
The horse business has took you a lot of places, though.
It sure has. My wife and I, we started out, we didn't have a pot to pee in or a window to throw it out of. And I bought an old 52 pink Ford off of, Larry Long's brother out on Farmertown Road. Give him $50 for it. And the door was wired on the right side. The door was wired together. You couldn't open it. And he told me the truth. He said, it looks like junk. But he said, I'll tell you right now, it'll take you there and bring you back. It's the motor and everything's good. It's just junky. And I said, I ain't worried about that. I just need something that'll run. And she and I got in it, took off one morning. We ran off and got married. Went to Jellicoe, Tennessee.
Jellicoe?
Had a guy with me, trying to think his name, Wayne Dunn. He drove us up there, and he signed the paper. And we got married in a little old building. I don't even know if the guy was a real minister or not, to tell you the truth. But what? We came back. We didn't tell her father a thing because I was afraid he'd kill me. But
so you didn't ask him before you died. You just
we didn't say nothing. So she told her mother, and her mother said, "Oh my gosh, you got to tell your daddy." Well, that night she called me. She said, "If we're going, we got to go." So I went, got her, picked her up. We got in that old Ford and went to Louisville. Now this is God's truth. That old door wired together. We pulled. I was working Charlie Durbin when I was with Doug Davis. He was taking money. Every week he'd give me half a check and he'd take the other half. He said, I'm going to save it for you. He said, you don't need this money. You ain't got nothing. You ain't going to spend it. I'm going to save it for you. And well, everybody on the farm kept telling me, that man, he'd say, you'll never see that money. So when we got ready to leave, I went down and told him. I told Charlie what I was going to do. And he said, man, you shouldn't do that. You're making a bad move. But he said, wait a minute. He went back and come back, and I think I had like $600 or something. That was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
Well, hell, we thought we was rich. So we go to Louisville, we get a little old motels, like $15 a night. We're there about 2 or 3 days, and I told Glenn, I said, hey, we got to get out. We got to go back home. We can't stay here. I got to work. We got to get money somewhere. So we come back home, and we got an apartment, old Yoakum Motel. You know where it used to be on?
Not just really.
It's right across from where you're going to UK.
Okay.
It was a big motel there, and right across the road was a little house. And they had 2-bedroom apartment up over Yeah, 1 bedroom, and it was 2 rooms, right? 2 rooms. And we rented that right across, and the guy that underneath us in the main house, he worked for the railroad all his life and retired. So we lived there for about, 5-6 months? Maybe. Yeah. And I remember she'd come get me. We'd sit there and kiss for 20 minutes before we'd drive off.
You was in love, wasn't you?
Oh, God.
What made you go to Jellicoe to get married?
Well, you could do that then.
You could run to Tennessee.
You could go to Tennessee,
line.
cross straight line, and get married. You can't do that no more. Well, you probably can now, but...
Was 75 here then?
They changed that then.
Was I-75 here then?
No, I don't believe it was.
So you took the old road to Jellicoe?
Yeah.
And went down there and got married?
Yeah. So when I guess she went back to the house. I came home. She went in, anyway, when she told her father, I was out farm, and he pulled up out there, and old Scott Miller was in the barn, and he said, I said, man, I ain't going out there. He said, go on out there. He said, you got to go out and talk to this man and tell him what happened, tell him what you did. He said, you got to man up. And I said, oh, God. He said, don't worry, I'm going to be standing right here. He said, if anything gets out of hand, he said, I'll come out and talk to him. I said, okay. And I went out there and talked to him, and he told me, he said, well, you made your bed, now you sleep in it. And he said, you know, I don't appreciate the thing you just did. And he said, it's wrong, what you all did. And he said, I could take it and force you to, but he said, I'm not going to do it. He said, see where you end up. And within a year's time, he was more my father. Her mother and father was more my mother and father than they was hers and her sister. Because he seen that I was going to work, and I was determined to have something. And so it turned out they were as much my parents as they were hers, and I got lucky there again. Because her daddy was smart. He'd take a dime and make $1 out of it, you know. And he taught me how to do percentage and stuff like that, you know. He was just a very smart person.
Well, if you run off and got married, it turned out okay. You're still married. So.
61 years.
What's the secret from Herbert Reed to be married 61?
Yes, dear.
Tell all the people.
Just yes, dear.
Just yes, dear?
If she said this was red, I'd say it does have a red color on it.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear.
And it works.
It took me about 4 years to realize that, and some bumps on my head, but I finally realized that she's always right.
Well, that's good.
But
it turned out.
We both worked hard, and when we was 26 or 27, we took her first trip to Europe. Went to England and Scotland. She had a pen pal in Scotland she'd been writing to since she was about 5 or 6 years old.
You flew over there?
And we flew over there, she and I, and we've been in, 80-some countries?
Yeah. Golly.
Yeah. For two old people come up with nothing, and I come up on the streets with nothing. And, I think we've done pretty good.
The Lord's blessed you.
Yeah. The horse business blessed us, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a true horse business Kentucky story right there.
I remember when I sold my first horse. I sold the first horse. I didn't have a clue. And the guy, I think we sold him for $25,000. And that was a lot of money then, too. That was a nice horse. And next morning he came over and gave me a check for $2,500. And I said, "What's this for?" He said, "That's your percentage for selling that horse." And I'm thinking, why in the hell would I run a horse? Why you want to run horses when you can make that kind of money selling? I was into that selling business from then on. That was like when I went out with him for riding and he was getting $2 a head. I didn't have to be a genius to figure out where the big money was.
So you sold a lot of race horses?
I sold a lot of nice horses. Yeah, I sold Jack Slade. He made 700 and some thousand. Troy Seal had him, and I had Lieutenant Lark. I guess he made like 700,000 racing and stuff. But I sold some good horses, yeah.
Bought them and resold them?
Well, I didn't buy them. I bought them for clients.
Yeah.
Sold them to clients, yeah.
So you run the commission business.
So I got lucky, yeah.
That's good.
And I enjoyed the racing too when I was young, it was going, but after a while it gets old. Because I'd go up with every horse and I'd walk over to the paddock with every horse, and all that stuff, and that's ridiculous. They ain't gonna run no better if you walk over with them than they are if you don't.
From your time in the horse business, you've been in it a long time.
2
years.
Yeah, 40 years.
What's the biggest change you've seen in the race industry from when you started till now?
The rules and regulations, number one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they've just about ended it. Because, when I was in it, you had a real cheap horse, man. You have to do what you can do to make him pay his way and get through. So we'd inject them with cortisone or something. If they give them butazolin, like you take aspirin.
Yeah, same
thing. Well, you can't give a horse nothing today. You can't help them. And that's a shame, too. Because it's like they'd rather see you run a horse hurting than run one that's not hurting, But
they test them big time now, don't they?
Yeah.
Blood test them.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't train a horse today. I just couldn't do it. You got to have a vet come out and watch a horse jog up and down the road after you work him and all that stuff. I mean, come on.
Do you really have to do that?
Yeah. You work a horse the next day. They got to watch him walk and jog and make sure he pull up all right and all that stuff. Are you not right, Eric? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Unreal.
Yeah. But I took a horse, to, I believe it was Belmont or Aqueduct one time, and run him. He'd win 3 in a row. And I took him Mac Miller, because I knew Mac when I was working there. And I worked him at 2 days before the race, and they had a big write-up in the farm, second coming of Hindu and all that stuff. And I took Alan Winter. He was the one that was riding him. He was from New Zealand. And got down there, and Alan, for some reason, they found something on him. They wasn't going to let him ride, but they ended up letting him ride anyway. And Mac told me, he said, "There ain't nothing up here can touch you." And a horse belonged to Powell Honeycutt. And I don't know if y'all know Powell Honeycutt. He's a big guy here in Lexington. And anyway, he coming out of the turn, he switched leads and he broke a coffin bone in his back leg. And we didn't do any good. So we come back home. About a week later, I was standing down there at the rail, and John Ward came over, and he said, "Herb, sorry about what happened up in New York. He said, is everything okay? And I said, no. I said, they fined me and Alan both. He said, what do you mean fined you? I said, well, they fined me $200 for impersonating a trainer and Alan Rennie $500 for impersonating a rider. He started laughing.
You got a lot of memories from this stuff.
Yeah. And I had a lot of old people work for me. It's good. Barney Marshall worked for me for a long time, off and on. And he had the only filly that beat Silver Spoon. And one time, Barney was one of the top trainers, but he got on that alcohol, and he was a bad alcoholic. Lost everything he had.
You should be in the Horse Racer Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he was. He was. I don't know about me, but he.
He could be.
Well, I started. You know, I stopped back and think where I ended up where I was at, and I didn't have. Like I said, I was never assistant trainer for anybody. Never run a barn for anybody. But I just used common sense, and I watched the old trainers and listened to them talk. Like, shoot, I'm trying to think. He trained Coffee Money. I can't think of his name now, but he told me one day, sitting there in the barn, and he said, Herbie, the main thing about training horses is common sense. And he said, you can run around this barn 10 times, put 10 pounds on your back and run around it. And he said, same thing with a horse. You got to bring them up slowly and let them tell you. When you're doing too much, back up. If you ain't doing enough, do a little more. And he was right.
Yeah.
He was right. But I'd get some horses that they'd bring in, oh, we can't do this. And I trained for Don Ball for a long time. I know y'all know Don Ball.
I've heard the name,
Yeah.
yep.
I trained for him for a long time. And they brought me a horse out there that they couldn't do nothing with. And I took her out the first day, and boy, she was a character. And second day I took her out, brought her back, took her bridle off, tied her up, and left the saddle on. I took her to track 2 times that day. The next day I took her to track 3 times. And after about 2 weeks, when I come back to barn, I could drop her reins and go in the stall, come back out, and she'd still be standing there. She didn't want to run and jump and kick no more. And I was giving her 6 quarts of feed a day and all the hay she could eat. But once she figured that she wasn't just going to go out there and go around the track 2 times and go home, she got to thinking, look, I got to do this again. I better take it easy. She didn't come back to the gap and start flipping and running and going crazy, you know. And but I enjoyed taking horses, some horses that they was having problems with. I loved that part of it.
I'd say.
Changing their mind,
Yeah.
you know. And I'd claim a horse and I'd give him 2 or 3 days to take him farm, turn him out for an hour or so. Just put him in the trailer in the afternoon and take him out and turn him out in the paddock for 2 or 3 hours. Let him get that feeling of freedom back. And the next thing you know, they're eating up and jumping, kicking, and feeling good again.
I guess the way they fed racehorses over the years has changed a lot,
Oh,
too.
a whole lot, yeah.
What they feed them. And
Yeah.
did you feed a lot of alfalfa back in the day or not?
Not a whole lot, no. Alfalfa's pretty rich in protein.
It
If you
is.
give them too much, they get the scars on you. But Timothy and alfalfa was my 2 favorites.
Mixed.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, about 70-30.
Grain. What grain was y'all feeding back in the
Well,
day?
we fed oats and I had a mix. I had oats, flaxseed, corn, barley, and molasses, and something. I had it all mixed one feed, and I bought it at Woodford Feed. I think you still use it, don't you?
Same feed he still uses.
Yeah. And you know, I'd give if I had an old gelding that was getting bad, you know, getting to where he didn't have any energy, didn't have any get up and go to him, I'd get that 100% wheat germ oil.
Yeah.
And I'd start giving him that. In about 2 weeks, he'd start feeling like a man again.
I've heard people say that.
Yeah. Now, you know, you could give them the equipoise and wind straw and stuff too. But the wheat germ oil was a natural, and it really helped them. They brought a bunch of them back where they felt like they was stud again. And I learned that from an old guy called Lawrence Eversole. He was an old war, probably one of the smartest horsemen I've ever around in my life, but he's ruled off every racetrack in the country. Mac Miller got permission for him, this is how good he was, to come to the track and gallop the horse that he won the Derby with. Lawrence would come out, the guards would bring him in, he'd get out, get on the horse, go to the track, gallop him, come back, get off, and the guards would take him back to the front gate. But what was that horse Mac Miller won the Derby with? I got it right on the tip of my tongue. Can't remember. But Mac told me the same thing. He said that man talked to a horse. He was a little bitty guy, gallop any horse. They just had that natural ability to it. Real quiet. George Arnold introduced him to me, Rusty Arnold's daddy. We was breaking horses out on a farm, and he said, now Lawrence is one of the best horsemen I've ever been around in my life. But he said, now he don't talk. He won't say nothing to you. Don't take it personal. I said, well, if he don't want to talk, that's fine with me. So we was out there, and I ain't kidding you. I'd say we worked 5-6 days together before that man ever said a word to me. I never said nothing to him. Then one day he come up, and we started talking, and man, I loved him to death. We bought horses together. We ran horses. We bought an old horse at Kingland for $1,000 off a guy. He had a mule in the stall with him. Lawrence got on him, took him down the track, and galloped him twice around and come back, and he said, let's buy him. So I went in, and Lawrence didn't have any money. He was just getting off one of those bad drunks. So I gave the old boy $1,000 for him. We took him farm. We went 3 in a row with him, lost him at Kingland for 5. And he trained him on the farm. No racetrack, out there on that old grass farm. But man, he could talk to a horse. He was just one of those kind of guys. But he went to the Army. He was one of the leading riders, and he went to the Army, went to the war, and they used him as a mole. And I didn't know this. He never told me he was in the military and all that stuff. Well, when he passed away in Cincinnati, the line must have been a mile long, and he'd won Purple Heart and all that stuff. And
who's training? Like all the youngsters coming up, do a lot of them do they call you for advice a lot nowadays?
They used to. I've had some call me, but not anymore. They know I'm not in it, and I don't.
Where's the future of horse racing going, you think?
I don't know. They got to change it, though.
Is there a lot of youngsters coming into it still? Trainers, you think?
Well, maybe, but, a lot of them is, I hate to say this, they're kids that the parents already in the business. They have a big string of horses. So they get out of college, they want to train, they get their license, and they got guys working for them that could be leading trainers anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
So, it's how many horses you got, it's a numbers game anymore. If you got 150, 60 head of horses, you're going to have 4 or 5 can run regardless of what you do.
A lot of this old way is going to slip away if some of these youngsters don't get in and learn it from y'all.
Yeah, it is, and I don't. The horsemanship, that's the bad part of it.
I know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Eric was a good horseman. He could find a bone on a horse. A little splint. I remember one time he was rubbing for me, and I gave him a hard time all the time. I shouldn't have done it, but I did. But I sent a horse to the track one time, and he had a little splint coming. And we got back to the barn, and I said, Eric, you notice anything about that horse? He said, no. I said, you just got through rubbing him. You didn't see anything wrong? He said, no. I said, check that left leg there and run your hand down it. And he did. I said, you feel that bump? He said, yeah. I said, that's a splint. I said, why would you send that horse out like that? And he said, well, I didn't see it. And I said, well, that's your job to see it. Don't do that again. He never did.
Rich Strike won the Derby, but you may take a little credit for it too,
Well, I never had nothing to do with him. I think I seen him train 1 or 2 times, and that was it. But I watched him run. When I watched him run at Turfway, I knew Eric was right. Because when he first told me that, I thought he's full of bull. That horse, he can't be that good.
What I'm saying, though, is you may have trained the trainer.
Well, I think that might be right.
That's right, yeah, a little bit of credit,
Yeah.
I've never been to Turf. That's one place I've never been, is Turfway Park.
Is that right?
I want to go
A
sometime.
lot of fun up there. Used to be run at night and stuff. I've many a trips coming back from there. It'd be 11 o'clock at night, snowing, sleeting, and get home 1 o'clock in the morning, get up and be to the barn 5:30 the next morning, But
they race up there in the winter, don't they?
Yeah.
In the cold.
Yeah. Purses have changed a lot up there. It's big time now. They got some good purses and stuff.
Have you seen some races in the snow up there in your time?
Yeah. I've come back when there'd be ice on the road, and I was driving that old van that we had, 3-horse van, and I was going across the bridge, and it was kind of like this, and there was 2 cars that done slid down to it, And I had a guy with me named Melvin Woodrum, and I told Melvin, I said, Melvin, I ain't sitting here all night. I'm going to try it. And he said, man, we're going to get stuck. I said, well, I'm going to try it. Sure enough, I got about halfway across, and that band started going, just got lucky, man, and I got to the end of the bridge. But it was cold as heck, and I was ready to get home.
A lot of these tracks are going to synthetic, ain't they?
Yeah, I don't like synthetic.
Ain't Keeneland synthetic now?
No, it was. They
changed it back.
Yeah.
I remember I went to Keeneland one time back 10 years ago, and it looked like little tire pieces.
Yeah.
Little chips.
Yeah. I don't like it.
Synthetic. You like the good old red clay.
I like that red clay sand.
Yeah.
And you know now though, you can't put toes on a horse. You can't put, grabs or stickers. It's got to be flat shoe. And I think that's wrong too, because when a horse pushes out of that gate, they're using those back legs to push out with, and they get sore in the rear end, that whirl bone and stuff, I think. But they've changed all the rules. It's their right to do it, I guess. So
they can change them, I guess.
You either stay with it and live with it, or get out of it.
That's
one or
right.
the other.
What else can you do?
That's it. If you want
Yeah.
that's right. You choose to do it for a living, you better be dedicated, is all I can say.
That's right.
You better be committed to it.
That's right.
And he never missed a day. I mean, if when I'd get ready to go feed in the afternoon, he'd get out of school. If she didn't want him to go with me, he'd throw a fit. So I'd take him out, he'd wash the tub, fill up the water buckets and all that stuff,
He wanted to go.
When I'd run at night, man, he'd go with me every night. We'd run, get back. He'd have to get up the next morning. She'd have his breakfast and go to school. But he lived it.
Who's your favorite jockey you ever had ride for you over the years?
Well, one of my favorites, I've rode Shoemaker on a horse.
Okay.
At Keeneland. Finished 4th, I think. But one of my all-time favorites is P.J. Cooksey.
Okay.
She's a little old rider, but I loved her to death.
Good.
She came from Mountaineer. It was called Waterford Park then.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, little old $1,000 races and $1,500 races come up there. But she had a lot of heart. She could get more run out of a horse at 3/16 pole to the wire for some reason. And I loved her.
Wow.
And I still do. Yeah, she had a lot of respect for her. But
I'm going to do a podcast with Mr. Sonny pretty soon.
who?
Sonny Leon.
Sonny Leon?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. I thought Shane Sellers was going to be here today.
He's coming April.
When?
April.
And Shane.
Oh,
I'm actually
Shane went
going up.
4,000 races. I just never had nothing I thought he'd fit.
I'm actually
You know,
going up here
around Beulah and places.
pretty soon. I'm going to go up and do one with Chip Woolley. Did you ever know Chip?
I've heard of him. But
Mind That Bird's trainer.
Yep, Mind That Bird. He's walked over on a cane.
Yep. I'm going to go up. I got in contact. I'm going to go up to Minnesota and meet him and record.
That was kind of like Eric. Of course, Eric had a different horse, $30,000 horse, but that horse he come over there with, they didn't give him a chance either. What a race, man. I watched that race. That was a race.
You'll never forget it.
No.
You ever go back and watch the Derby anymore just for
Oh,
fun?
yeah.
Just to
I've
see
watched it 100 times.
Just to see it again?
You get that same thrill, man, when they turn for home and you see him moving. And then when that horse come out on him, I just dropped my head. I said, it's over. And he had to go around him. I looked back up and, man, he's going to the front. And I said, oh, my God.
Was you sitting with him when it happened?
Me and him were standing there.
Okay.
He passed out. Well, he didn't pass. He just fell, dropped. And he dropped. I almost dropped with him. And, man, I said, God, what a thrill.
Then you had to rush through all them people getting to the circle.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then, you know, I turned around because one of the girls rode races for me. Her husband's Frankie Brothers. What's her name? Donna. Yeah. And I turned around and looked at her. We'd come back. I said, they was all over us, you know. I said, where in the hell were y'all when we was coming over here? Of course, nobody said a word to us. They didn't come in the stall and say anything to us or nothing. It was like they was embarrassed we were in the race, you know. And after the race, they were all over us.
Golly. Oh, Lord. That's a story.
Yeah, I claimed a horse from her husband and run him and went back. She rode him for me. I run him right back at Churchill, and she rode him for me and win with him. And I claimed him for, I believe it was 12. And I run him back in a non-winner of a race other than maiden or claiming at Churchill and Louts, and he win it. And I ended up doing pretty good with him. I guess I made about 95 or 100,000 with him.
What's your favorite track? Anywhere.
I guess I'd say Keeneland.
Keeneland.
Yeah.
Hometown track.
Hometown. I remember when Eric was born, I was going around that track. I'll never forget it. I was going around the backside, and I come into the turn, and coming through the stretch, it hit me. And I said, my God, I'm a father.
It hit you on the racetrack.
Oh, Lord. And look, when I pulled up and started back to the barn, if it was raining, I'd have drowned. I felt like Superman. And I said, man, I got a family.
Good Lord. Well, oh well.
Hell of a feeling. It was.
I'd say it is.
Yeah.
The horse business will give you a lot of memories.
Yeah.
But it's history, this area.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't know how she hung with me because I had that chip on my shoulder, you know. And,
You sure did.
and but she hung in there with me.
A lot of people don't understand what horse racing means to this state,
No.
and the people out west, maybe people listening even to this podcast, don't understand the feeling and just what horse racing is to us here in Kentucky.
Greatest thrill on earth. I don't care what anybody says. Some of the wealthiest people on earth have said the greatest thrill they ever had was watching their horse pass the finish line. There's nothing like it. And some of them said, why did I play golf all those years? You know, I've heard them say it on TV. They get in the horse business, there's no thrill. I don't care if you're running for 2,000 or 2 million. The thrill's still the same. When they turn for that stretch and heading home and you got a chance to win, you just hold your breath.
I did a podcast. I was in Louisville at the Hyatt Regency back last April, and I went to the bar to get some food at the hotel, and I overheard a conversation from some people down the bar. And this guy's name was Michael McMillan.
Yeah.
And he was going to be in the Oaks with that horse, Where's My Ring? So he was there. And being the guy I am, I had to talk to him. I wasn't going to not. So I snuck around and went over and said, I'm Stephen Hayes, shook his hand. And I said, I heard your story. Would you like to do a podcast with me? He said, when and where? I said, well, we'll just go up to the hotel room and do it. I got him set up there. Come on up with me. Him and his wife come up there and sit down and talk to me. To hear, you should go listen to it. To hear his story, this guy never owned a horse. He just loved horse racing.
Yeah.
He's an owner, not a trainer. He loved it.
Yeah.
And they bought this horse just on a phone call during a football game, a Chargers game. Had to have it. And she made it to the Oaks.
Oh, my gosh.
And his wife and him was having some trouble. And she had left him for a while. They told it all on the podcast. And she called and said, where's my ring? She lost her wedding ring. She said, Michael, where's my ring? He said, that's the horse's name. Where's my ring?
Where's my ring?
And they named the horse that. And now they're back together. And of course they ran in the Oaks. And they got a story. It was good too. They didn't win. I think they had some problems. I forget what happened, but he races a lot at Del Mar in California.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's still buying
Nice
horses
track,
and
Del Mar.
racing still. So I guess they're going to start quarter horse racing in Kentucky again, or they may have already. Over at, in eastern Kentucky somewhere.
Yeah, I heard something about that too.
Yeah. They ran at the Red Mile until they're getting it open.
Yeah.
That's one place I love.
The Red Mile.
I love it.
Every time I go and bet on one, they break stride.
Do you go there some still?
Yeah. I like going to Red Mile,
I love it.
watching trotters sometimes.
I
I
love
do.
it.
I like it too.
I love being there about in August, right at dark. The sun setting over Fifth Third Bank.
Yeah.
And just looking at that track and feeling and smelling it. It's just something about it.
See, a lot of people don't get that. They
I
just
get it.
go and they study the horse. They don't see the wonderful things, good things around them that makes it great.
I get what the Bluegrass State in Lexington's about.
Yeah.
Looking at that sunset and just feeling being here. It's a feeling.
Yeah, it is.
If nobody out there, if anybody listening to this, if you've not been to a horse race,
Go.
Make the trip to the Derby if you can afford it.
And I tell people that leave at our bed and breakfast all the time because they come and go to Keeneland every year. Mm-hmm. And I said, don't go out there. You don't have to go out there and bet $100 across the board or $100 on every race. I said, find a horse you like or a rider you think's cute or something.
Yeah.
And I said, bet $5 across the board on him. And if you lose $100, you've still had a cheap entertainment and a good day and a thrill that you won't get anywhere else in the country.
You know what? My wife loves horse racing.
That's good.
She loves horses. She's just a horse nut.
Yeah.
She knows nothing about the statistics of racing or nothing about it. Me and her go to the Red Mile, and I just get a book. We go in there around all them people at the bar and stuff, sit and pick us a TV out, you know. We have the best time at the date night at that table.
Yeah.
And we neither one really don't know nothing.
Right.
She just says, oh, I like that horse. Let's bet on that one.
Yeah.
And we love betting on Remington Park in Oklahoma, the quarter horses.
Yeah.
Because they're short races, and there's usually only 4 or 5 horses. She can flat pick them. And we done good. Like, we spent $100 and walked out of there for $2,000.
Yeah.
She does good picking them things. That's the best thing. Like, somebody that don't know what they're doing, just pick a horse. So if you're going to a horse race, you know, you don't have to know what you're doing to bet.
No, you don't.
Just have fun.
I've went out there with people, and I'd study the farm at night, you know, and everything, and pick out the trainers I knew that was good, and the riders, and the ones that had the best percentage. And I'd tell them this, and there'd be 2 or 3 in the crowd with me say, I like that rider. He's so cute, and I love that horse. He look at that pretty, beautiful red horse. And they'd bet on him. He'd be 20 to 1. My horse would be 4th or 5th, and they'd win it. And I'd say, well, you idiot. You've done it your whole life, and all you had to do is look at the rider and make sure he's cute and the horse is pretty.
Well, every time she picks a horse and I do the bet, when I'm up there at the little screen, I always pick the longest shot.
Yeah.
Put $1 win place show every time,
Yeah.
just for the heck of it. And it's just so much fun.
Well, you know, you said that when after the Derby, about 2 weeks after the Derby, I took Glenda up there off of Richmond Road to get her hair done.
Okay.
And while she was in there, I walked down the street, and there was a little bar, a little restaurant there. And they sold ice cream and beer. And so I went in and sat down and ordered a beer. And this young girl kept looking at me, and I noticed her looking at me. And she came over to the table, and she said, I've seen you someplace. She said, have you ever been on TV? And I said, no, I've never. I said, my son won the Derby about 2 weeks ago. And she said, that's where I saw you. She said her and her husband every year bet $10 across the board on the longest shot in the Derby. And she said, this drink's on me. And if you want something to eat, it's on me too.
Did you get ice cream?
Yeah, I did. But look, I couldn't believe it. She said, we biggest bet we've ever won. And they bet 10 across on Rich because he was the biggest, longest shot there.
Was they interviewing you quite a bit after that? Trying to?
Oh, you mean?
Reporters and stuff.
Oh, yeah, they came out. Yeah.
All right, we're going to get out of here. I guess everybody's tired and ready to go home and probably eat supper. I'm hungry.
Yeah, I could eat too.
I always can eat.
Yep.
I like to eat. In closing, you got a lot of wisdom. What's something you'd tell everybody, all the youngsters out there? Not just something in horses, but just in life.
Keep your mouth shut, listen to older people, and learn to read people, and know when to move and when to stay.
That's
and
true.
I learned that real quick. I knew when my welcome was running out. I knew when to leave. I knew where to go. And I have an aunt that Glenda met her, and she said she was telling her she come home one night at 11 o'clock. They was opening the door, and they looked over on the swing, and she like to jumped out of her skin. I was laying there waiting on them to come home 11 o'clock at night.
Golly.
So, you know, you just got to...
He didn't have a home.
No, not really.
Mother died.
But I look back at it, and I think I don't know how I did it, really, to tell you the truth. I mean, I walked those hills up there in Powell County. Wonder I hadn't got bit by a rattlesnake or something, you know, or somebody hadn't. But back then, it wasn't that bad. You know, You'd see a kid walking up the street with a 410 going squirrel hunting. Well, if you see one today, they'd lock him up and his parents.
Powell County's different now.
It's different. It is, yeah. Grown up a whole lot, but it's getting ready to get bigger.
You still claim East Kentucky probably home, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, my grandmother lived there, and the house is still there that we was in. Her never had electric, and but we always had something to eat. It wasn't much, but we'd have something to eat.
Cornbread and beans, that's all you need to live.
Yeah, and had an old cow and had a hog. You know, it was rough up there then, but if you didn't know any different,
You didn't know no different.
didn't make any difference, you know.
I will always respect the folks in Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah.
The way of life.
Yeah.
Everything over there. I love it.
Yeah, it was rough back then. I remember when they started that food thing, you know, what was it called? Relief. And everybody, they'd give them food and stuff. Man, that was great. But they'd give them big packs of cheese. Well, they figured out a way to beat it right off the bat. They was trading that cheese for moonshine, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, these people now trade their food stamps for stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Same thing. They, you know, when something good comes out, somebody figure out a way to capitalize on it and turn it into a bad thing. But
We got one of them. I live down at Liberty, Casey County.
Yeah.
And we got a brand new building they opened up. And on every Tuesday, there's a line. They give out free food. Big line, all the way down 127 for people to get food.
But
If
I don't
people
know.
need it, it's good if they really need it.
Yeah, I just went into a dark place.
But you turned out of it
I did.
and made history.
I sure did. I got lucky. And I come close a couple of times getting in really, really deep, but somebody was looking after me.
Yeah, your wife took care of you probably.
Well, it was before I
lined you
met
out,
her,
too.
but you know, as long as I was with family, I was pretty good. But I could tell, you know, they couldn't afford to keep me either.
Oh yeah,
Things were tough, and you know, they was barely surviving too. But
that's true.
I knew when to go to another family and get in. But
Yeah.
it was in between there where I made a mistake a couple of times. But
Did you graduate high school?
ninth grade, as far
Got
as I
out.
got. See, back then you went to 8th grade, you could quit.
You quit.
Yeah. So
Did you go to school in Versailles too?
yeah, I went to I think at 8th grade in Versailles.
And got out.
Yeah, I just went enough to where they wouldn't come after me. You know, I'd go 2 or 3 days a week just so they didn't come. Because my main thing always coming up is I didn't want to end up in an orphan's home or a reform school.
Oh yeah.
And I knew that if things went wrong, that's where I was going to end up.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, some things happened, and I mean, I wasn't going to tell nobody, because if I did, they're going to go to the police, and then I'm going to a home so, you know, I kept my mouth shut.
I bet you on that cattle truck the whole time your knees was knocking together.
What are you talking about? I just knew because he kept asking me questions, you know, about family. You sure you're family? And I kept telling him, yeah. And he told me, he said, I never will forget it. He was a big fat guy, had a hat on. And he said, this is against my better judgment. But he said, I'm going to let you out.
Did you ever see him after that?
Never again.
Never did.
No,
Never got his name or nothing.
no. I wasn't thinking about it. I
just
was
got
just
out
trying
of
to get to Milner, where my aunt was. And I remember I knocked on the door. She said, my God, where did you come from? How did you get here? And I said, I hitchhiked. And like I said, she was having a hard time then too, because her husband went through that silage cutter. And,
She took you right in.
she took me right in. She was like a mother to me. And that was probably the safest place I ever stayed. And see, my mother and her sister married, and my dad and his brother, two brothers married two sisters, so we're double first cousins. It's kind of like being brothers and sisters, you know.
Yeah.
And one of my cousins had a house right beside a rental property I had there for sales, Zany, and I go over and see her every once in a while and we talk.
Still go, huh?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Herbert, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And
brother.
I've sure enjoyed this.
Well,
I've
I enjoyed talking to you, too.
Yes. I could talk to you till all night and tomorrow.
Yeah, me too.
Just listen to these stories. You should write a book.
Well, I had a lady from, what was it? The one that comes to the house, Glendon, does all that thing about, they come and give you a mental test.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of who it was. But anyway, she tried to get me to do it. She'd wrote 4 books about kids that
I'd
had
let
come
her
through
write.
like I had. And she said, I'm telling you, you let me write a book and you won't have to want for nothing. She said, I'm telling you. And I said, no, I'm not interested.
Don't want to do it.
I didn't want to do it. And I did this for Eric because, it's hard for me to talk about it.
Oh, yeah. I can see that, yeah. But it's memories. Shows you how far you come.
Absolutely.
That's the truth.
But I'd blacked it out for, I don't know how many years, 50-some or something.
Yeah.
And I never thought about it again. And then when this come up, I did. And like I said, when I did the interview out at Mercury, I was so depressed I shouldn't have been doing it that day. I couldn't talk for crying,
Yeah.
And I go through a depression a lot of times. And so it's just, but I've been blessed.
Yes.
Nobody's been blessed any more than me and Glenda. We have both been blessed.
That's good.
I mean, to come up as hard as we did and do the things we've done and end up where we're at now, it's a miracle, complete miracle.
And that Derby win just set it off, didn't
Set it all off.
All off.
I don't even have to buy a meal anymore. I go out, everybody knows me.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, thank you all for listening to the podcast. We sure appreciate you. It means the world to us. Check out Rich Strike on YouTube. Watch the Derby if you hadn't watched it. If you're new to horse racing or new to horses in general, you owe it to yourself to type in Rich Strike on YouTube or whatever and watch that horse race.
Thrill of a lifetime. You won't believe it.
And watch the interviews of these guys. Eric Reed. Look up Eric Reed. Herbert Reed on YouTube. It's a story. So thank y'all. Check us out on the website if you're new here and you don't know about it, www.drafthorsesandsmulesforsale.com. We got a merchandise page on there now. You can get on and buy Harness Up Podcast t-shirts. Check that out. A lot of other good stuff on there. And subscribe to the YouTube channel. We sure appreciate all y'all. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you on the next one.
As another captivating episode of Harness Up with Haste Draft Horses and Mules draws to a close, we extend our sincere gratitude to our listeners for joining us on this enlightening journey. We hope today's discussions have deepened your appreciation and understanding of these magnificent creatures. Remember, the adventure continues beyond this podcast. Stay connected with us on social media and share your stories. For more information and to explore further, visit drafthorsesandsmulesforsale.com. Thank you for being part of our community. Until next time, keep harnessing your curiosity and passion for these God-given creatures. Farewell for now.